Okay, so I'm, like you said, I'm into African cats. And my main thing is I like Synodontis. So this is going to be on Synodontis and all of their closer relatives, some of the genera that are close to Synodontis. We're going to cover the bioregions, the various areas that they all come from. Some of the other things, I'll run through sexing, feeding, tank mates, and some of the weapons that they have. Because they, especially you get into the bigger ones, they can give you a pretty nasty wound. So starting with this. Most people talk about Synodontis from the Rift Lake area, and like Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, Lake Victoria, and they call them Rift Lake Synodontis. And then a lot of people refer to all the other ones as riverine Synodontis. So, but you know, of course, there's more than just rivers out here. There's lakes, there's big lakes, there's all kinds of stuff out there. So they're not just, it's not just that. And then if you take the rift area and you split it up, you kind of dissect the rift. You've got Lake Victoria here, which drains kind of north towards the Nile. So it's totally separate from Lake Tanganyika. And then you got Kivu and Lake Edward here and Lake Albert. They all kind of drain with Lake Victoria. They drain north. You got Lake Tanganyika, which actually is part of the Congo River drainage. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's part of the Congo River drainage. So it heads west from here. And Lake Rukwa, it's a self-sustaining sort of little system. And Lake Malawi, it goes south through the river here into the Zambezi. So they're all separate. They're not all connected. When you hear Rift Lake cats, most of the time you're talking about the ones from Lake Tanganyika. So here's the principal bioregions of Africa. You've got the Upper Guinean. So basically this is areas kind of, everybody calls it West Africa when you're talking Congo and the Lower Guinean and the Upper Guinean area. Nilo-Sudanic, so that's the north, the Nile drainage, and over here, the rivers here in the western part of that area. The Congo is its own area. The southern area is, you got the Zambezi River here, and then all the east coast, the little rivers on the east coast. This coast along here, it rises, when you come in off the ocean, it rises quite steeply. And so these are very short rivers, but they're full of fish. There's 129 species of Synodontis, an acanthoclethron, one Brachysynodontis, that's the bat and soda, which could be a Synodontis. The Brachysynodontis and the Hemisynodontis are, a lot of people in Europe, they still consider them Synodontis. They don't split it up like that. And we got 9 Microsynodontis, which are mostly described from the Cameroon area. And 1 Macochiella, which is from Sierra Leone, which I was supposed to go to. I did have a trip planned. A lot of people ask me if I've been to Africa, and I haven't. But I've had a trip planned to the lakes, which fell through. I had a trip planned to Sierra Leone, but the timing was off. I was supposed to go there just when the Ebola thing was going on. So we didn't think that was a good idea to go. So it didn't go, which was too bad. And then 2 Makocus, which are more up in the Nile area. So we'll move on. So the Guinean regions. So you got these countries here. You got West Africa, or the Upper Guinean, and you got the Lower Guinean here. Everybody kind of lumps this together, but in between these, if you're a Kili guy, you know this. There's the Dahomey Gap, which is a big, arid, fairly dry area in between the 2 rainforests here. And the weather here, it comes in off the Atlantic, heading east. The mountains here kind of catch it. They catch a lot of the moisture from the weather, and it drops here and creates the rainforest they have here. They go across here, the mountains change direction here, and it kind of zips across, and it's very arid, it's very dry here. And then here we got the kind of the beginning of what moves into the Congo from the Lower Guinean area. So starting with we'll just kind of buzz through some of the fish from the different bioregions. So from the upper Guinean area here, these are some of the ones from there. We've got Malcochiella painii. These are a great little fish. They're about 2 inches long. It's monogeneric, so it's one species in the genus. And here's a Synodontis waterlati. It's a very nice pattern on them. They're quite colorful. They can get more yellow and different colors throughout the body on them. There's a bunch of different Synodontis here from that same area. Anectens and Sorghii, which is almost like a Eupterus. It's kind of a feather fin. It's got kind of a tall body, just like the Eupterus, and has a tall dorsal on it. Decampi, Colgoensis. There's some here that you would never see in a pet store or in a fish store. Coensis is a nice little fish. Torre, those are both nice small ones. I'm not really going to talk too much about big Synodontis or anything like that, like the ones that get 2 feet long. Some people like them, but I'm not going to talk about them too much because to me, for a home aquarium, like most of us are, I think a 12-inch fish is a big fish. And a big 12-inch Synodontis is a handful, literally. They're fairly strong. And now back to the lower Guinean area. So this area here, which encompasses part of Nigeria, the Cameroon, and Guinea, and some of those countries along there. We've got Carine. This is the latest Synodontis that's been described a few years ago. Robianus, which I think everybody kind of knows that one. Negrita. They're all from that area, from kind of the Niger River area. There's the Rebelli obesus complex. It's a whole group. It's really hard to tell them apart. Everybody talks about brown with black spot Synodontis, and a lot of these ones come from this area that you see. From this area also, there's 9 microsynodontis, which is actually my favorites, and there's 17 Synodontis from this area alone. You've got Batesi, which is a nicely patterned fish. And then these are also some of my favorites here. This Acanthoperca and Puno, they're only about 4 centimeter long, or like not even a 2-inch fish. And they're just tiny. And right here they have, just like loaches, you know how loaches have that opercular spine by the eye that you can jab you sometimes? The males of these species have that as well. And this one's a nice little patterned fish. And but they're never exported. They're rarely, never ever seen. I'd love to get a hold of them. There's also Woluensis, Albolineatus, Tasmani, Nguensis, and Violaceus. Violaceus is actually a nice cyno that it's got kind of a purpley color when you see it. They're really nice. Some other ones, these are all microsynodontis. This is Batesi, which most microsynodontis, when they come out, get exported, people are calling them Batesi, but they're not. Right now, usually you see this one. It's an undescribed Nigerian species. It's the most commonly exported one. This here is a male and a female that I had, and they're pretty cool. They're pretty reclusive in the tank, but they love to eat, so they come out and they dart around all over the place. And like this female was maybe not even 2 inches long. This male here was about 2 1/4, 2.5 inches long. They're not very big at all. This poly here, this is the next most common microsynodontis out there. This one here was about 2.5 inches long. So they get very long looking. The males can get really long and thin looking. And they're another really cool. But you get them like this with this kind of solid pattern, but they can also be spotted. Most of the time you see them spotted, like that upper one. And breeding them, I had them breed. I had this pair in a tank with just this here. And one morning I spotted eggs down among the roots of the Anubias plant. And but by the time I got there, the male was scooting around in there, and he must have been eating them. So I didn't see any more after that. I just went and did something, came back right away because I was going to separate it, and they were gone. But I've got another friend in England who, after I gave this talk there, all the English guys were like, okay, I got some of those at home, I'm going to pull them out. So they did. A bunch of them did. And the one guy, put together a tray similar to this, and he'd come back one time and he had a bunch of fry down in the bottom of his tray. So they are perfectly spawnable. Mine did it, I got the eggs in April, and his were done in May. So April, May, in that range is probably the best time to go through like a bit of a rainy season. Okay, going to the Nilo-Sudanic region. So this is up in the north. You know, you got the Nile River here, Senegal, a couple short rivers over here, Senegal, Gambia, Niger, and the Volta, Lake Chad Basin. This is a big water basin right here. Flows into Lake Chad and then comes out. This was the first described Synodontis. Linnaeus was the person that he set up the way our taxonomic system is set up now. He's the first one that did that, and this fish was in the first edition of the Systema Naturae, and so it's kind of interesting that way. And it's a cool fish too. This is a typical Nilo-Sudanic fish from the North Africa. It's got a really high body, kind of really sloped forehead, pointed snout, really deeply forked tail. Just like here, you got this is a juvenile one. And yeah, they're really quite a stout fish. They're a good fish. They get a good size though.
Is that a spine on the top?
Yep, right here. Yeah. Oh yeah. And their pectorals too, right here. And they know how to use them. Here's some other Nilo-Sudanic. You got Synodontis shawl. These are quite a nasty fish. Thorax. This is a juvenile. Juveniles are spotted with the shawls, and they'll lose their spots and get darker. They go through a couple of phases. Thorax, Eupterus, and then this is a juvenile Eupterus, and their pattern changes quite a bit when they're juveniles like this. This is what I thought was a macrops. I don't think it's a macrops anymore. I'm still not sure what it is, but I've got two of these. One of these that I have, they're both identical fish, but one's got really long pectorals that go back to the ventral fins. So it's probably a Gelidensis. I don't have a picture of that one here. But so this isn't really a macrops. That's a different fish. And back to the Eupterus, we've got Eupterus. There's a couple different ones that have this high body, kind of really stout body and tall dorsal. That's the Ansorgi. Melanopterus is a really similar but a very dark fish, almost black. And Velifer comes out of the Volta River, and it's got big bold spots on it, and it's quite a nice fish too. And then down here we've got let's just change that a little bit here. Okay, Filamentosis. I think some of these ones, like Filamentosis, is a kind of a social fish, just like Decorus. I think you're all familiar with Decorus, and they're a very social fish, and I think they have this tall dorsal on here because that's how in their schools it's kind of I think it's a bit of a signal among the school when they're swimming around and stuff. These were available a couple of months ago. These were available, and they're pretty cool fish too. They get about 10, 12 inches long, which is a good sized fish. And these still from the same area, we've got Negrita again, Violaceus, Wemiensis from the Wemi River, which is right just to the left of the Niger, and Ocellifer. Ocellifer are cool fish, and I think we see them quite a bit in the fish stores. They love to dig. So I don't know about some of the other ones, but I know Ocellifer for sure. They'll dig under anything you got, rocks and whatnot, and they'll knock it, just like when you got to be careful with cichlids. They'll do the same thing. They like to get as low as they can go. And then here we got Synodontis membranaceus. They're a real character fish. You can see this one here. It's with a recipinatus. And this little one is probably a 10-inch fish. So these membranaceous they get a good 12, 14 inches. They're a real character. If you want a great pet fish, that's what these are. And they're a real character here with the big filaments on their barbels, the big membrane on there. They're really cool. If you just want something that's got character. They're not colorful by any means, but it's a real character fish. And then getting back to the Resipinatus and everybody sort of has heard of Synodontis bat and soda. And then there's a third one out that's got a different pattern than this. And they've got kind of a two-tone beige and dark pattern. So there's different ones of these. So I think these really need to be looked at by the scientists or by us. And Resipinatus have the difference between the two. They're very, very similar fish. Here, this is a leucistic bat and soda. And you see here on the barbels, the only biggest difference between these two fish is this has the big, thick membrane on its barbel. And here, it's got the extra branches on this barbel. So that's actually the main difference between these fish. And this little juvenile they're very, got a neat pattern as juveniles. But these get about 10 inches long, and the bat and soda stay about 7, 8 inches long. And they're upside down swimmers as well. They'll swim around upside down pretty regular. So this little juvenile here that's the way he was sitting against a log. And then some of the smaller ones, we got Mulcocus brevi and Mulcocus niloticus. They're found along the Nile in along the weeds along the side. So they'll hardly ever get exported, I'm sure. You'd have to go find them yourself, go cruise the Nile and start exploring that. But they're fairly small. This small one up here is only 31 millimeters. Moving to the eastern drainages, which has a lot of really interesting fish in it. All these small rivers along here. We've got, here we got a Victoriae, so out of Lake Victoria. Gelidensis, which is in the Juba and the Scabelli here, along here. And Afrofischeri, which is, I think they're also in Lake Victoria. Yeah. And then along these small rivers right in the center here, Tana, Athi, Pangani, Wami River, Ruvu, Rufiji, we've got, you can find Leoparda, which is these all have really cool patterns on them. Leoparda's got a bit of a leopard pattern. Serpentis has a sort of a camouflage pattern. Orientalis. Rocquensis has big spots. No, Rocquensis gets to be big like this Gelidensis, gray, and the males kind of get a red dorsal. And as juveniles, they have a really neat pattern. Methesi, Mane, and down in the Lake Rocqua drainage, which is right here, this spot here, which sometimes drains to the ocean, but it's usually a self-enclosed system. The Ricardoe is a brown catfish, brown Synodontis with big black spots on it. Rocquensis is quite nice, and Fuliborni is similar to an Afrofischeri here. Kind of a neat pattern. Going to the Zambezi region. So here you got the Zambezi River flowing through here. Over here, you got the Caprivi Strip. You've got the Okavango is this area. All this area right here is the Okavango. You've all heard of that on National Geographic and stuff. They always have stuff on that. And it all drains through the Zambezi out to the ocean here. You got the Limpopo River down south. And the Zambezensis, Synodontis zambezensis, basically is in both these rivers, in the Limpopo, the Zambezi. And it doesn't go very far up here. You've got the other ones, you've got Uznami, all these other southern ones, Thamalacanensis, Leopardus. That's why when you were talking about Leopardus earlier, I was going like, it's a southern cyno, it can't be, and it looks like this. But again, these ones they're out in the Okavango here, they can be seen, all these ones with the nice pattern, they can be seen in large schools out here in the Okavango, and they're just in schools of thousands out in the main river. So, and I'm thinking again, they got these taller dorsals, and it's probably fairly social. fish. And then I've also included in this area the Niasse. I've got 3 of these at home, and they're from Lake Malawi. And there could be 2, maybe 3 species in Lake Malawi as well, but nobody's really looked at them yet. But they're pretty interesting. So this southern area is actually one of my favorites. If I was to go collecting for specific fish, I'd love to get some of these because they don't get very big. Like the biggest ones are probably 7, 8 inches. They don't get huge or anything, and so they're all perfectly capable of being kept in an aquarium. So here we have there's a Leopardus and Nigromaculatus. Here's these are 2 interesting ones, Macrostoma and Macrostigma. These were caught by an exporter out of Lake Malawi. And so they go just to the rivers beside the lake, and they catch the fish that are there. So these ones came out of that river, and then they export them from their facility. That's a Niasse down there again. The Kwanza drainage is in Angola. There's only the one main river in Angola, and it has 1 Synodontis that's known out of that area, and a few other fish in this area, but it's just this very small drainage, and it's something I've never seen. Moving up to the Congo. So this is probably the one where you probably know most of the Synodontis that you'll see here, or a lot of you will. Here we have, from the northern part here, from north of the main river, there's the Ubangi River up here, and you've got Ornitissima pardalis from the Jaw River. Xeropetalis look like that. You got the good nice spots like this one. And this is the other one I was talking about. That's the undescribed species. So this one here is actually, to me, this fish right here, this yellowish colored one, is more exciting to see and talk about than the pardalis, which are really quite trendy right now. They're very expensive fish. But this one here is an undescribed species caught alongside the pardalis. And they have this yellow color which goes away in a tank in about 2 months. They just turn into a brown fish, which is kind of too bad. But yeah, to me, that's more exciting than this nicely colored one up here. I kind of liken the pardalis to the Hypancistris zebra. You know, it's kind of trendy and kind of catches people's eye, and everybody wants one. But you get one of these in the tank, they're nasty. They're just like an Angelicus. They're quite nasty. They can be. And then down here we got Multimaculatus. It's a nice small little one that's nicely patterned from the Ubangi area as well. And it's only about a 2-inch long fish. And it's long and thin. It's kind of probably comes from the faster areas of the river. This here is a Lefere, and I ID'd as that just from looking at what it is. It does have damaged dorsal, and I believe it came from an area in the upper Congo, which is way up the river, farther, just kind of east of or west of Lake Tanganyika. These are some of the ones that you probably recognize. You got your Angelicus here. I've got a tank at home with six of these in there, along with a few other fish. Robertsi here, it's a nicely patterned. Another one that stays very small. It's only like 2 or 3 inches long as adults. They're quite interesting. I got a couple of those as well. Dorsomaculatus, Alberti. And what's interesting about this, like if you look at this Alberti, you can see the head is all yellow. It's got some color to it. Whereas if it wasn't set up properly, this was in a species tank, and it was set up properly. And all these fish, they'll show a lot more color. Most people throw Synodontis in a tank full of cichlids and just, they're tough, they'll survive, right? But that's not the best way to keep them. If you want to get color out of them, like take, for example, everybody knows Nigerventus, the upside down catfish. If you take a dozen of those and throw them in a tank and set the tank up just for them, you know, with nice overhangs and some leaves and stuff in there, they like to get under things. You'll see all colors of the rainbow in them. You'll see yellow, blue, reds, all kinds of stuff. Not just brown, you know. Pleurops is an interesting fish.
Do they change colors as they grow, or is there differentiation by variety
Their pattern will change.
as they grow?
Yeah, the zebra kutu, this one here, they've got a neat pattern on them, and they're all quite similar. They're only from Lake Mai-Ndombe in the Congo, so they're from one specific area. I think they're probably a separate species, but there's actually an article in that in the latest, in one of the magazines out there. Not the Amazonas, but the one from the UK. Grishophi, shouted eni. That's a nicely patterned one. They're a good colored fish. They're a nice size, and they're spawnable. Like, this is probably the fish that spawned the most accidentally. Decorus. Decorus is another one that's sociable. You know, you can keep them in groups. If you keep one or two in a small tank, of course, they're going to chase each other. But if you get a bigger tank and you had a bunch of these, I think they're a little more social and hang out together. And they're a really nice fish. And they get a good 12 inches long. So they're a big fish. Here's some of the fish from the faster moving parts of the rivers, like the part of the Congo that's after Malabo Pool, where it goes for 100 miles, just crazy, and it goes really fast water. Soloni, Camelopardalis. That's actually not Camelopardalis, that's a different fish. Camelopardalis is more like got giraffe pattern on it. I've got some of those that I got mixed in with Soloni. And then Burchardi here is another quite popular one. They're nicely patterned fish, and so the best thing with these is to get a tank with current, lots of current in it, and set them up with rocks and whatnot, and they interact quite nicely in that. And from Lake Tanganyika, which is also part of the Congo system. I have it in with the Congo just because that's where Lake Tanganyika drains, is into the Congo area. It goes west. So you got Ursake here, granulosus, which are nasty. They're great Synodontis to look at, but they're a nasty fish. They're real bitches. And Melanostictus here is a nicely patterned fish. Again, nice color on them. And they're not found in the lake, sometimes in the lake, but usually in the rivers along the edges and along the reeds. They're found in the reeds and stuff along the edges of the lake, of the rivers of the lake. Grandiops and multipunctatus are often confused. The best way to tell the difference is Grandiops, one or the other, I can't remember which. Grandiops, I think, has 7 soft rays on its ventral fin here. There's 1 hard ray on the outside and then 7 soft rays. And multipunctatus has 8 soft rays. So if you ever want to tell the difference between Grandiops and multipunctatus, and you want to be sure, take a picture of their pectoral and start counting rays. Lucipennis and Petricola. Again, these two are often confused. Lucipennis are quite a bit smaller than Petricola. Petricolas get like a good 5 inches. Lucipennis only get 3-4 inches. The males can get bigger, so it gets confusing with the males. The biggest difference is, I find, with the spotting. You know, you look at the spotting on the head here. The Lucipennis have numerous spots, but they're spread apart a little more than on the Petricola. The Petricola has lots of small spots on the head, and they're tightly packed. And then if you look at the spots on the body, these ones on the Lucipennis are bigger, kind of bigger than the eyeball, and they're kind of uneven. They're not nice, even spots. Here, the Petricola has lots of evenly spaced spots, and they're not really bigger than the eye. They're usually smaller than the eye. So, and then there's a couple other things like their behavior, how they swim and stuff like that. I can tell the difference. I just went to a place in Spokane and sorted about 100 of them. Just, this is a Lucipennis, this is a Petricola. You know, it's confusing. All this gets really confusing with these 4 fish. And then here you've got Synodontis pauli. So these ones here, that's how they usually come in as juveniles. Fairly all kind of patterned like this. Then one will darken up, like this one here. This is the dominant male. One will darken up and almost turn black. I've had people say, oh, I've got 2 different species. But these things are so variable that these are all poly, and they all came in the same group for me. This is a subdominant male, so he gets a nice golden color, but he's not as dark as this one here. This one's dark and grouchy looking. And then with the females, they turn into this here. This is your usual female. This is a subdominant female. That these ones here, there was 2 this color with this group, and 1 this color, and the 2 that were this color would push this one around. So with polys, I figure that the darker they are, the more dominant they are. The lighter colored they are, the gold ones look nice, but they're not. You got to watch them that they don't get pushed around too much. But I really like this fish, and these are spawnable. It's quite similar to the way most people do the lucipinnis or the petricolas. And that's the principal bioregions. We'll go on from there, but so here we've got. All I want to say with this is that if you see, like here, you've got the Negrita gold. Sorry, here, this one here. You often see these in just a solid yellow color or kind of a pale color, and they call them Negrita gold. So it's supposed to be a Negrita that is xanthic, and here we've got a leucistic showed with Ni. This one was naturally colored until it just one day it turned for him in Germany, a friend of mine, and it turned this white color, and it was perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. Here's a leucistic Brachys Synodontis batonsoda and an albino grishophi. And so all I want to say about these is a lot of people look at them and go, oh man, they're great. They must be worth a lot of money. And they're really not. It's quite common to see this. So if you see this anywhere, don't get too excited. I've even seen with Grandiops, not multi, but the Grandiops. This one right in the center here. I've seen albinos of these. People have had those. And, other people are like getting excited. Oh, you're going to make lots of money. It's like, no, don't worry about it. Like I don't like all that extra stuff, right? I like the natural colors. Like these colors are great, just the way they are. They got the nice red and the colored eyes, copper eyes. And they look so great, just their own colors. You wouldn't want them to be albinos and whatnot. So yeah, it's more common than you think. Sexing them, a lot of people want to vent them. You can, but it's not a big deal. Here, I like to vent them from the side. Like here, this is a male over here, this is a female. And this is venting, taking a picture against the glass or whatever. A lot of people do that and then send me pictures and say, what do I got? I go, I don't know. Send me a picture like this from the side. And here, this is definitely a male. You can see his little papillae here. And that's the way you sex Synodontis. That's the way I do. Just a nice picture from the side. And if they're healthy, the males will have this. The females will have, a more rounded belly and whatnot. And that's the way to do it. So that's what you're looking for right there on any Synodontis. If you're looking whether or not it's a male, they'll all develop that. And even when you get to, this is a male Microsynodontis, the undescribed Nigerian species. And this is a male. You can see it's got the tubercles on the head and the little papillae here. And I'll show you the female here right away. The female will have, it'll look like there's less space between the ventral fins and the anal fin. And of course, they're going to be a little bit different shape, right?
She looked pregnant.
She was full of eggs for sure. I know that because this one died and I checked her out and it was all eggs. And so again, it's really close here between the ventral fins and the anal fin. It's not so spread apart. The big belly, of course. And she's developed too. She's got a few tubercles on the head, but not as much as the males would have. And this is only they're not even 2 inches long. They're a great little fish. And then so this is a Burchardi. And so some of the Synodontis from faster flowing rivers, they're a little more streamlined. Their hydrodynamics are set up a little different. So they've got this extra ridge around here, which I don't know why. Some engineer would have to explain to me why that's there, but I'm sure it's to help keep them sucked down to the bottom in fast water. And that extra ridge probably helps with that and protects their genital area. And here you can see it again. This is on a Saloni, and you see how it's indented here, and they got that extra ridge around there. So it must be for the hydrodynamics. They're streamlining. This is a Synodontis shoutedeni, a very mature male. Again, it's got the on the head, all the tubercles on the head. It's got this all here is closely related to, they're called epithelial projections, and similar to odontodes on plecos, the spikes that they have and whatnot. It's kind of the same sort of thing. And so a lot of times you'll see a Synodontis, it's got a kind of really dull looking color. And it's because it has this kind of fuzzy stuff all over it. So it dulls it out. Here's another picture of that male. It's so thick on the belly here that it's got air bubbles in it. And then feeding Synodontis are easy to feed. They're opportunistic, they're omnivores, they can be aggressive feeders, like these guys here. I like to drop in a shrimp, and they just chase each other around for an hour or so after all these shrimp. They love shrimp. There's a lot of shrimp in Lake Tanganyika, so they love to eat that.
Are you talking regular shrimp?
I
Like
just
you get in the store?
Yeah, I go to the store and I buy the uncooked ones, just a bag of them, and they're for the fish. My fish eat better than I do, for sure. You go to the veggie area, and you get zucchini and all that stuff, and green beans, and all my Synodontis eat veggies too. I also feed them the rapashi food, and for my Synos I use the Soylent Green, the veggie one, and they love it. But they also eat zucchini. They dig right in here. The Angelicus come in and they take big bites out of like this here on the corner here. That's one bite from an Angelicus. And they just come in and chew away on it, along with.
Throw the zucchini in, or do you do like some other people do, cook it for a couple of minutes?
No, I just stick a fork in it and
Raw.
yeah, yeah. I don't even cook that fancy for myself.
I know a number of breeders will give their.
They blanch
fish-
it first or heat
they
it.
give them zucchini.
Yeah.
And
And sometimes it gets too mushy. Like some fish, especially for pleco breeders, some species of ancestors will start on the outside. Some will go for the mushy stuff inside first. So it depends. And I feed green beans as well. I first noticed how they like veggies when I had all my Angelicus were like only 2 inches long, and I had a tank full of baby ancestors, and I was feeding the ancestors, and the Angelicus would come in and grab the beans, grab actually the seeds out of the beans, and then take off again, and they just sit back and chew on them.
Oh wow.
So yeah, no, they're all the fish. Like if you look at all the studies from Synodontis for like studies that have done in Africa and they check out what they've eaten and stuff, a high percentage is often vegetable matter, plant matter. They're not predatory, anything like that. Of course, they're opportunistic. If there's a fish laying on the bottom and they can grab it, they'll eat it, but they're lazy. They're not going to chase a fish around to eat it. They like meaty foods, veggies, and one thing about Synodontis, especially the ones, if you're keeping Lake Tanganyikan Synodontis, they'll overeat. And so they'll eat too much and they'll hurt their stomachs. Like if I've killed some by going away on holidays or something, come back, and then you throw in the same amount of food, and then they all dive in and eat just as much as they did before. But they damage their insides. Then they get that big, I got pictures of it on my phone. I was going to put it on here, but they get that big swollen belly, and then the rest of their body gets skinny, and they just waste away. It's not a good thing. Tank mates for Synodontis. So with cichlids, if you're going to add cichlids to Synodontis, don't add territorial cichlids, because they'll be fighting over the same caves and stuff like that, right? Like here I had these Statocranus here, blockhead cichlids, were spawning down in the rocks here, and this Angelicus was trying to get at them. By the next day, they had 6 Angelicus pushed against the glass on the far side of the tank. And they wouldn't touch, these guys would bring their babies around. The babies would be swimming all around an Angelicus, and they wouldn't touch them. They were just scared of them. So cichlids that are good for cynos would be non-territorial cichlids, like a lot of the Malawi, a lot of the mouth-brooding cichlids. Because even if they do set up a territory, it's only for a few hours if they're going to spawn with a fish in the tank. Plecos and cynos, they'll fight over the same caves and whatnot, so they're not really a good mix together. Same with these Mystis leucophasis, Asian upside-down catfish. I've seen them called Synodontis. They're advertised with them or as them, or sold alongside other Synodontis with the same price tag on them, but they don't mix well. I've actually got one in a tank with my Angelicus, but these can be pretty pushy, pretty nasty as well. And they get a good size. They get 10, 12 inches long. A good fish with them is, this is a Chiloglanus congugus. They're a great fish. They're really active. Any food I would throw in, they just tackle it like a football player. They just go in and they start rolling around with the food. They're a great fish. And that's a Chiloglanus. There's a lot of different species of Chiloglanus in Africa, and this was a Congo one. So they're quite hardy as well. I kept them for 3 years, yes.
Are they touchy about water conditions?
This one?
Yeah.
No, because this is out of the actual main part of the Congo River. And yeah, most of the fish from the main part of the Congo River are quite hardy. I always recommend Congo tetras or any of those relatives from them. They're all, Alestoptercius, that sort of thing. They're quite hardy. They're good for like a bunch of Congo tetras, a school of them, 12, say, with 6 Eupterus in a 75, 80 gallon tank would look nice too, right? They kind of go together. And they're both aggressive eaters, and the Congo tetras are fairly aggressive eaters. And so they would live well with Eupterus and some of the other bigger Synodontis. For smaller ones, you've got Microtenopoma. This is a nanum or Ansorgii. I've got some of those that are going to go in with my Microsynodontis. They should work out well together. They're fairly shy fish, but they're good. Paratropius buffi. School of these in with a bunch of smaller Synodontis would be fine. These are a great fish too. They're feeding time, they're just like little bullets. They just whip all over the place. They're a little schooling fish. And this is a killifish out of out of Kenya, I believe. Cynopanchus buccabanus, from Uganda, sorry. And another good one is Gara. I've been keeping these as algae eaters, Gara flavatra. I think their common name is panda Gara. And they're a great algae eater. And naturally there's Garas in Africa, so it's kind of it works out well. But this is an Asian Gara, but that's the one you see the most. So I just was experimenting with it, and it works fairly well. Good algae eaters. So weapons of the Synodontis for the various ones. This is a Macochiella painii. This is my favorite picture that I've had. Most of these pictures are my own. So the first thing they're going to do is most of the time when you're taking pictures, you don't see this. You see this one here. You see their butt. And the first thing they do is turn around and take off, right, when you're trying to take a picture of a fish. So that's their flight response. And when they turn around and do that, they lock out their 3-point defense here. They got their ventral spines here, which they can lock out, and their dorsal spine, which they can lock out. And if you try to suck up this fish, you're just going to end up with those spines getting stuck. They've got the head process here, this head cap that they have. You can see it nicely colored on this fish. It's a hard cap on here. It's like a helmet. And then the humeral process, this little triangle thing right here. Every Synodontis, it's like a fingerprint for Synodontis. So, if I'm IDing a fish, that's almost the first thing I look at is that right there, and I'll compare it with others, and I'll say, if it's supposed to be triangular shape, but it's really long and pointed, then it's the wrong shape for that species of fish, that sort of thing. So it's like a fingerprint for these things. And then here we've got the 3-point defense, I talked about that, but it can also be used for offense. They,
Birger, how did you get that 3-point defense shot?
by luck. Just
You just happen to be afraid of something?
just happened to, yeah, just by luck. Just the right place, the right time. So weapons of these things, like here's just some man-made weapons. We've got the African Kazinga here, lots of different spikes on it. Some weapons out of the South Pacific here, shark's tooth weapons. And if you look here at, this is a pectoral spine from that same Malcochialapenii, from this one here. That's from one of these that died on me, and so I just kind of took pictures of it before I got rid of them. And that's a pectoral fin, or pectoral spine off the fin. You know, usually they have the soft rays in here, but this is what they have, and then they have a soft coating over top of all that. And it's pretty nasty looking when you look at that. This one was 11 millimeters from base to tip. And then this is the surprising part. Like, this is a needle. I just grabbed the needle and took a picture of the end of the needle against there. And the needle is dull here. And that's the pectoral spine still. And then it's got, you know, this is why they get tangled up in nets when you catch them. You know, I try not to use nets too much. I'll use a bigger net, and I just get in there with my hand and pick them up.
So you see that, and then you stick your hand in there?
Oh yeah, I do that with Mad Toms, everything. Even the bigger, even my Angelicus, I'll grab them.
His fish love him.
No, they've gotten me pretty good. I've been jabbed. It stings when they jab you. And so here, yeah, there's Alpha Soloni, and so here you can see the layer of mucus on there. I think it's just mucus that's on there. And that's off an Angelicus. So just imagine that getting, and what the fish do is they get up, they're pretty smart with it, they get up beside each other and they'll jab each other with that pectoral. And if you see a wound like this here, that's a pectoral spine jab, and it just gets infected a little bit. And they'll kill each. I've had Angelicus kill, I had a big male shouted Ene, that one I had earlier with the pictures, and it got killed by an Angelicus. It was just trying to compete with an Angelicus, and it got killed. That's pretty stout, pretty stiff here. I wouldn't want, you get that jabbed in your hand, it stings.
Or you spend a lot of money for a fish and you take it home and it gets assassinated.
Well, could happen with any fish, right? And then, so a lot of people ask about Petricola and Lucipennis. One of the main things between Lucipennis and Petricola is Petricola has an axillary pore, so this here, and Lucipennis does not. This is a Lucipennis. There's no hole here that you can see. And here, this is a Grandiops. And the multipunctatus have this as well, you know, so that you can't really tell the difference with them with this. But with Petricola and Lucipennis, Petricola has this pore, and they both have the gland inside. You can see the gland inside here. That's what creates they have a bit of a venom that they have that comes out through here, and it comes out at the end of the pectoral. And if a fish tries to, what happens if a fish tries to bite them, it paralyzes their mouth, and they get stuck with their mouth wide open. And that's why all these different spotted fish are like this in Lake Tanganyika, because they're all trying to make use of that, where fish won't eat them because they recognize them as danger. And here's a dorsal spine from that same Malcochialapenii with the same needle. And that's just a 9 millimeter dorsal spine. This is probably a 2-inch dorsal spine on an albartai. Nigerventus has the same thing. This is the sharp part right here.
How do you ship fish that have spines like that? Because, I mean,
Big
everywhere
bags.
that they come in to the stores, they get them in plastic bags. What kind of container are these?
Well, you just use the thicker bags, double bag, or use containers. Yeah, that's what I do. I just bag them up. Yeah. And I've shipped the smaller ones in breather bags.
Yeah.
And their teeth. So what Synodontis have is they have scraping teeth. They usually comb through the aufwalk, the algae and whatnot that's in the water, on the rocks and stuff. And so they're not, they're not really predatory at all. They don't have grabbing teeth like a piranha or any of the bigger fish. These are scraping teeth. And so, but they also know how to use them. Like here, this is a Soloni, or Camelopardalis, that was left with an Angelicus too long. And all these marks, these white marks on the side, those are all scrapes from the teeth. So they'll come in, they'll even do it on top of the head. They'll scrape away on top of the head and it gets all raw up there. And these are some of the photo credits. Most of the photos were my own, but these people all contributed to photos to me, which I appreciated. And that's it for me. Thank you.